check
Yeah, it says everyone can see and hear you now. So we are live.
Well. What music do you listen to when you're chilled?
It depends on the mood of the day, but I love listening. I love Thames. I love like Afrobeat in general. And what else? Her, Her. And yeah, I'm going through, I know I'm late to the party, but I'm kind of going through an Amapiano phase now.
Stuff side.
So
cool.
how's your weekend been?
Busy. Can you hear the sound?
Yes, I can.
Okay, all right. Let's see who can join us whilst we listen to a little bit of music.
I love it. There's even music on this show. I TM for too much. Wow. Okay. Attention to detail.
When I was with Sonia so last week, we're like, we needed music embedded. Now I'm like, no, I'm gonna get a speaker close by. It's better.
Yeah. But the problem is these apps have like background noise filtering features. So when you talk, it actually filters out the sound.
Oh, really?
Like now I can't hear any music at all. There's music now.
I just wanna be free from chains that are binding me. I wanna be free from chains that are hurting me. Wanna be free from chains that are binding me. I wanna be free from chains that are hurting me.
How was your weekend?
It was good. It was good. I'm actually from Auckland Park. There was a family event happening there. Beautiful. Out in the sun, summer sun, spring sun, with the kids. Oh, guys.
Joburg is different when the weather's nice, eh?
Come on. And I was rocking the regalia, so.
What is this new item here that I'm spotting? Here, my we the people must also have
Don't
new.
worry, Che.
Hey, Macho.
I got you.
That's very cute.
How was your day?
It was beautiful. Yeah, I spent a day with family. As I said, my husband's uncle, who has actually survived cancer and been through so much over the last few years, has not only survived, but has also graduated. He got his LLB under some extraordinary circumstances. So it was just a day of honoring him. And okay, how do we must sit still? I feel like I want to move my thing a bit back. My head feels really big in relation to you. Okay, there we go.
Sorry, Che, I'm just also checking on there are certain things
House.
I get it so
Okay. The house says we're good to go.
okay. Well then, uh, ladies and gentlemen, people of Mzansi, welcome to this Fireside Chats with RISE Mzansi. Every Sunday, we are trying to connect with the RISE Mzansi leadership in all aspects. And tonight, this evening, we've got Vuyiswa Ramokgopa. Sometimes I feel like I have to say Mrs. Doctor Professor something, because your life has been so big and so exciting. But before we get there, Sis Vuyiswa, what's in a name? What is and who is and what is in Vuyiswa Ramokgopa?
Thank you, TM. And please, there's no doctor and professor yet, but they may be in the near future. So, from your lips to God's ears. So, I actually love this opening question because I think in this question is already quite a life story. Um, I have three names. My first name is Vuyiswa, as you know. My second name is Ritumezi. So Vuyiswa being Xhosa, meaning happiness. Ritumezi being Setswana, meaning we are happy. Magdalene, which is a Bible name, many would know, but I was named after my grandmother. And my original surname before I was married is Muchekwani, which is a Venda surname. My people come from originally from Chakuma in Venda. And then I'm now a Ramokgopa, a card-carrying member of the Ramokgopa family. So I love that question because I think in many ways the uh, the makeup of my names is the story of South Africa and the story of Johannesburg. I come from a multicultural family where different languages are spoken, different cultures exist and coexist. My mother's family grew up or spent, came up in Soweto. We know Soweto is also very diverse, multilingual. My father's family is from Davidton. And so I've had the benefit of having access to a lot of different cultures, a lot of different communities, and yeah, and a perspective of South Africa that has given me the outlook that I have.
Tell me about your childhood. I think, one of the things that we talk about at RISE Mzansi is how important children are, even in our journey. We are incorporating children as part of the democratic process and as part of almost shaping the country. It's almost like we've forgotten that you don't have to be 18 to have a vision for the country in which you live. And so when you were being nurtured to become Uvuyi, so that we know today to be the national chairperson of RISE Mzansi, what were those formative stages like? And take us back to the memories that you hold dear, that really define the essence of who you've become.
Hmm. Whew, shoot, we're going deep. I mean, we're not even like 5 minutes into this thing, and I'm already in therapy. So, I mean, I think so. The story of my earliest memories really start when I was 5 years old. We lived in Johannesburg at the time, but we were relocating to Cape Town. So I actually started school in Cape Town. And how that happened was that my mom, who was in the advertising industry, got a job. And at that time, because the country was in transition, and now suddenly people had realized that like Black people are a market that needs to be spoken to and accessed. They decided to now bring on, more Black people into the advertising industry, of which my mom was part of that first wave of writers, copywriters, and creatives that came into the advertising industry. So that's how. So my life, my earliest memories were of starting school in Cape Town, new school, new city. My father is an actor, so he kind of always had that fluidity, and so it wasn't difficult to move. But what was interesting for me is I remember the first day, I mean the day before school, actually the week before school, starting grade 1. And my biggest stress in life was that I did not know how to read. And I couldn't deal with the fact that I was starting school, but I didn't know how to read. I was like, what are they going to say about me when I get there? So I decided what I would do is memorize the longest word on earth in my mind at the time, which was encyclopedia, because we had encyclopedias in my house. And so I would see that word written there. So
Yeah.
for like weeks, I would spend my time just memorizing how to write that word and how to spell that word. And I was like, maybe I can't read, but no maganjani, like when I get to school, I'm going to show them with this word that I know.
Mhm.
I'm going to spell the hell out of this word for them. And this is basically me in a nutshell. I think I've always been a person who just, one is what's the word? I think it's precocious.
Hey, what is that?
Education is critical, and I value learning, and I value growing and learning, and intellectual stimulation. I have always also been a person who believes in showing up prepared. I think there's no better. They say fate favors the prepared mind. So for me, the ability to be prepared for whatever challenge lies ahead is what gives me the confidence to navigate the world. And so I don't believe you have to be born great at everything, but I think you can learn and you can prepare. And that will give you the confidence to navigate even those unknown spaces, those intimidating spaces, etc., etc. So that's like, so that just starts my journey. So I started my life in Cape Town. And then my parents split up. They divorced at some point, actually quite early in my life, and my mother remarried. And then we then left the country. So I spent a chunk of my formative years living actually in France and in Senegal, in Dakar, Senegal. And that was also quite defining for me to experience another country and experience another Africa from the one I had known. I remember arriving in Senegal, being a Joburg kid, Cape Town kid, and being like, there's no malls here. There's no roads here. Like, what do people do? But that really shaped my perspective of, kind of what's important in life and what, just the power of a people that have values and certain cultures and values, and how that actually supersedes material wealth. I mean, interestingly enough, at that time, that country was a whole lot poorer and in much more dire circumstances than South Africa was in, the early 90s. But yet there was no crime, and there was no sense of danger, and that sense of danger that you felt in Johannesburg, you didn't have that there. And so that kind of also affected me at a very early age in trying to understand like what makes certain societies just work in a certain way. And and it made me realize that it's not just about being rich or poor, it's actually about the culture and the choices that people are able to make, even in spite of very difficult circumstances. So and of course, it gave me exposure to people from different cultures, people from different worlds, and gave me an appreciation for the fact that, we are but one small piece of a puzzle. I mean, South Africa is an amazing place full of great people, but we are one small piece of this world, and there's so much out there, and so many amazing, beautiful, wonderful people out there. So it just kind of opened my mind up to what was possible, and I live in a state of possibility. I think
Yes, you do.
I
That's
don't
one
think,
thing you definitely do.
yeah, I don't think we can do what we do without being obsessed with what is possible, which is very different from what is. What is can be
Mm,
challenging, but what is possible is what wakes me up every single day. And so, yeah, and then, I mean, I finished school. Eventually, we came back at some point. I finished school in Johannesburg. I consider myself a Joburg uh, thoroughbred, thoroughbred Joburg person, because my grandmother, my mother, my grandmother, 3, 4 generations back are all from Johannesburg. So this is my home spiritually and physically right now. And yeah, what else? Oh, I have an older brother. He's 10 years older than me. So Nekede last born. So I've got serious last born tendencies. And I admit that. My husband tells me that all the time, but he's also a last born. So I think he's very sensitive to such things.
mm,
Yeah, so I've got an older brother. And I think it goes, I think one of the greatest privileges that I've had is to grow up with a mother who, she started her company. She left corporate actually and started her own business in 1995. And she was very clear at the time that the reason she was leaving a very successful career in the advertising industry was so that she could have power over her time and to be able to spend time with her children. And so, as much as going into kind of the entrepreneurship space or self employment space would have been very tough for a single woman at that time, um,
mm,
she made that choice for us. And because she was not willing to choose between needing to be the corporate what and needing to show up for her kids. And that's always just been something that's stuck with me, and it has informed also, I think, the decisions that I've made, the choices that I've made in my career. um,
mm,
I have never allowed myself to be kind of shackled by a job. I think time is our most valuable asset, and we need to make time and spend it with the people that mean the most to us and doing the things that mean the most to us. And I
mm.
really learned that, just observing my mom. It wasn't easy, of course, being self-employed, having income not being secure and all that things. But even that, it was such a brave choice to make, at that time, and I've been constantly inspired by that courage, and it's definitely informed my approach to work and to my career.
Mm. Wow. What is interesting is that, I mean, we met probably varsity days, and this is actually the first time we're having this conversation. So
Yeah,
I'm so
it is.
honored to actually be in your space, to listen to you take us through this journey of who Vuyiswa Ramokgopa is. So much of what we are doing now is about the human experience,
Yeah,
and this moment is about how we honestly portray ourselves every single day. This is who you show up as, and this is what you bring to the table. So thank you for sharing that. Vulnerability is power, and this is what this moment is going to be about. So, talk about vulnerability. What's your relationship with failure? Like, when have things gone wrong, and how have you responded to those moments? Um, yeah, just take us through when things get dark. How does Vuyiswa show up?
mm. Yeah. So I mean, I don't like to fail, obviously. Like most, like most people, I don't like to fail, but I have definitely experienced failure on many levels. As you said, we met in varsity, so I think one of my uh, biggest wake ups or biggest failures was actually quite soon after varsity. So when I was 22, I started my first business. I left my job in retail at the time. I was training as a buyer, and I decided to go out and start my own business. And I opened up a clothing boutique in Braamfontein, when it was just kind of starting out, and going through that initial gentrification thing that it was going through. And I took all my money from my Provident Fund. By the way, it was like 1 year's worth of Provident Fund money. So it was like 60,000 Rand or like 80,000 Rand. But in my, it was like more money than I'd ever seen, in one chunk at a time. So I took that money and I decided to open up this business. And too much fanfare, got a lot of great media and things were like on top, and 2 years later, when things got challenging and I had to make a very tough decision, and it was just before my son was born as well. I had to make a tough decision to shut the business down. And there were a lot of people who said, no, don't do it. But I mean, I was bleeding cash. I had just had a baby as well, and I couldn't be in the store all the time. And, there was cash flow issues and financial management issues in general. And it was tough. I had to close the store down. And one of the things I realized in that moment was so much of my own ego and how I had defined myself and my success and my self-esteem was tied up in those four walls. I had defined myself as like Vuyiswa, this young, successful shop owner person. And I'd created this whole life around that. And with the shop closing, it was like a whole part of me, was being taken, actually. And it was not just the shop closing, but it was like, me personally, am failing. And it took me quite some time, actually, to get back on my feet. I mean, as I said, I'd also just had a baby. So it took about 8 months where I then had to actually get back in the workforce. So you'll remember I said I'd been working for Edgar's before I'd been a buyer. And even when I left there, like, it was like, yay, you're going out, you're doing this brave thing, only to have to come back like 2 years later and knock on the same door and ask for work again. And come back and face people who, had said, we know these types, and one has to humble themselves and say, yes, I went, I tried, I failed. Now I'm back. And guess what? The paycheck is still the same.
Yeah.
So, who really failed? But the point is, I think it really, it was an important moment to just understand myself and the ways in which, one's ego cannot be, on one's self-worth really, cannot be defined by the titles and the stuff that we have and the ways in which we define ourselves. It was very humbling to have to walk through the corridors of EdCon and have everybody be like, oh, you're back. Oh, what happened? And you've got to tell your bloody story like 20 times over to people. But I did, and I made a decision that, you know what, I've got a child to feed. I've got, life must move forward. Pambili, we must go, So, so as I'm saying, I don't like failure, but I also appreciate that it's often in failure that we are able to actually pause and reflect and have those difficult conversations with ourselves and see ourselves, in a sort of be exposed, actually expose ourselves to ourselves. So I don't want to fail, but I appreciate the role that failure has played in my life in giving me those much needed moments to pause, reflect, and rethink and recalibrate. And that was like one of my first big ones. I've definitely even had more since, In fact, I had a very sort of pivotal kind of, I always say there was a moment in life where God came to fetch me. God actually, I feel like, I know in that moment God came to fetch me because I was running my own life into the ground and I was not on a path that I should have been on. And I was literally at rock bottom and I hit absolute burnout, absolute rock bottom, where for 6 months or so, I didn't work. I couldn't talk to people. I couldn't do anything. And I experienced real burnout. But again, it was in that time when I started, really reading the Bible, engaging, seeking to be closer to to God, and by extension closer to myself, to understand myself better, and I wouldn't be the way I am and the person that I am had I not taken that time to lie on the floor, accept my failure, and do the much needed internal work to move to the next step. Yeah.
Che, Vuyiswa, thank you for taking us there. Thank you for taking us there. Um, you're also an incredibly remarkable woman. You've done amazing things. For a moment, tell South Africans your dopeness. Share your dopeness, and don't be shy, because
Goodness.
part of what we do at RISE Mzansi is that we back the best. And I certainly believe that you are one of the best that this country has to offer. And they will read our bios, they will see things, but they will never really know how dope we are. For a moment, just brag a bit, like do that pop
Oh, goodness. Yo, Tia, you're putting me on the spot here, buddy.
I know it's easy to talk about the failures. Now you gotta go the other side of the coin, which is, how dope you are. Because I know how dope you are. Tell South Africa how dope you are.
Yeah, not easy. But what I will say is that I'm definitely in good company. Um, I also feel the same. I feel like I have the pleasure of working with the dopest people every day. So, okay, so I don't know. Where do I start? The list is endless. No, I'm joking. Look, I think if someone were to ask me what my superpower is, I would probably say um, my one, I'm like a super strategist. Um, my superpower is just my ability to understand a lot of seemingly disconnected things and make sense of them and create strategy and to come up with ideas. I'm extremely innovative and creative. I have the fortune of coming from a creative bloodline. So that is also my superpower, is being able to not just shuffle around things that are, but to imagine that which doesn't exist and to create. Um, I I think my other superpower is my ability to connect with people. My background, my childhood, my upbringing has given me an uncanny ability to connect with pretty much most people across all different spectra of society. And so, I think the term people person is actually a little bit, it's not it, but it's just, yeah, I'm a connector. I connect with people and I'm a connector of people.
Yeah.
And that has done me really, really well. Yeah, and I mean, overall, I've had an amazing career. I've always, I've always been. I think I was born a leader. I've always had leadership capabilities and qualities. I was head girl of my school. I got 7 distinctions. First black head girl on that. Um, and I've always just been a person who knows like what I want and is quite uncompromising about that. I think I'm a great mom. I actually asked my child the other day, and it was like I didn't pressure him, but I asked him to performance manage me, and he confirmed that I am in fact a great mom. So
That's what's up. That's
yeah,
what's up.
so I'm firm, but I'm also empathetic, and I think I have, I think one of my best qualities is my ability to lead people, but in a way that brings them along the journey rather than dictating and telling people what to do. And in fact, that's my parenting style as well. I'm very much about leading by, I don't want to say leading by consensus, but it's leading by agreement. I don't know if there's another better way to put it. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's about it.
Okay. Thanks, Vuyiswa. So now we're gonna talk about RISE. Why? Why RISE? And at the same time, what is a national chairperson? I mean,
Eish,
please,
good question.
big national chairperson. Please, can you, in your own words, why RISE? And as the national chairperson of RISE Mzansi, what does that mean? And what is the impact and contribution you bring to the organization?
Okay, so let's start with why rise. So, I mean, even before that, I want to declare that I have never uh, actually been a member or an active participant in any political party before. Not because, but I've always been politically active and politically conscious. I just have never been able to find an organization that embodies the culture that I would want to see in a political organization. So, I mean, even at its height, the first time I voted in the early 2000s, yes, although I may have voted the way I voted, and I voted for the ANC, I can comfortably say that. I voted for the ANC, but I would have never seen myself as a member of the ANC.
Mm.
And in fact, when I dropped my pen and finished my politics, my PPE degree, and my mom asked me, like, she was like, okay, so you're going to go into government, or are you going to, like, what are you going to do now? And I said to her, no, I don't think there's a place for people like me
Mm.
in government.
Mm.
I think they will, either I'll be too much and they will get rid of me because I'm like, or it'll destroy my soul. And so I always knew that it just wasn't a fit for me, and therefore I didn't go into active politics. So in typical Vuyiswa fashion, I, like many others, have been observing the decline of the country for the last circa decade, if not more.
Mm.
But the sort of mental work that has been happening for me is more around the solution now, and saying, okay, we can watch this train wreck, that's happening slowly before us, or we can do something. And what does that something look like? And just coming back to the earlier story I told, one of the things that always used to it was a big thing for me actually when I was a child, when I was growing up. I mentioned to you I was in Senegal at the time, and a lot of people, most of the wealthy, well-off people in Senegal, their children would go to school in Paris. There would be a university in Paris, or one of the French-speaking, like Paris or Belgium, but mostly Paris. And even like just to go shopping to buy clothes and whatever, they would shop there. Same with the like Nigerian kids, they would go to the US. They were very like, everyone was going to the US, and you would see this in general with other African countries. And I used to think like, these people are so intelligent, they're professionals, they're working all over the world, they're making lots of money, they're doing whatever, but they're letting their countries like go to ruin. Why are they living there and working there and spending their money there and not in their own countries? And it was a question for me that it always bothered me, and I was always proud of the fact that as South Africans, we will be found at home. Like South Africans like South Africa. You don't. Yes, we are all over the world, but like South Africans are in South Africa, and I've started to see that shift now over the last few years. The discussion, the narrative, even amongst many of my peers, many of my age mates, is around where will our children grow up? What universities will our children go to? And most people that I know who can afford to even think that far are quite clear that their children most likely will not go to university in South Africa and will probably not settle here. The children themselves are quite sure of it too, which is really, really concerning for me. So so that really has led me to this point, and it's been about that which I used to almost judge other people for. I realized that now the wheel had turned, and I was now at that juncture where I was those people who has the capabilities, who has the access, who has the resources. And I'm at this crossroads now where I need to make a decision for myself and my family. And one has to decide, are you in or you out? And so if you're in, you can't be in and fold your arms. You've got to be in and doing something, because folding your arms is going to make you suicidal. You just feel so, powerless. So that's really how this all came about. I mean, obviously, I think that God's hand was just very much in all of this. The way that we all kind of met and connected and came together at this perfect moment, at this perfect time. I knew, kind of quite soon that, yes, this is the vehicle. These are the people. We are all of the same mind. We all see things. We may not all have the same politics or the same specific beliefs in everything, but we all mean and want the best for this country. And that is so for me, it's very much about this beautiful culture, this organization that we've been able to create, and the bigger mission of what we're trying to do, which is define and redefine the political culture of South Africa beyond what we've all come to know, in the last 30 years. I think that is actually what wakes me up and fires me up more than anything. So I think RISE, people always love to say, what makes RISE so different? I just, honestly, I don't think there's anything like RISE, quite frankly. There's no other political organization right now that has the capabilities or even the ambition. It's actually even about the ambition to want to fundamentally change how politics works in this country, which is very different from just wanting to change the faces and the leaders. And I think that the people that are around this table and the heart and love that we have for this country is the thing that's going to get us to the next stage. And people always say South Africa needs to get over our exceptionalism. I don't think we need to. I think South Africa, I think we are exceptional. And this platform, this moment, this opportunity is another 1994 moment, because it gets to show the world again that we are exceptional. We're not going to jump on a boat and leave. We're going to fight. And that's what really excites me about RISE. So that's why RISE. So what is a national chairperson? Well, again, I can't speak for all other organizations. I'm not really sure what Gwede does on a daily basis. Lumam Helen, I can show what Gogo does on a daily basis. But I can speak for myself, and in my context and in our context, let's remember we are like a political startup, right? So in many ways, people are also kind of holding here and doing here and doing here, and we're not in parliament and we're not in the legislature. So that also impacts kind of our daily work, right? So I like to think of myself in a way almost like the political CEO. So we have a whole team of operational people, but I kind of see myself as the de facto kind of in-house CEO of the political leadership, which is very different from the political leader of the organization. So that's a different thing altogether. So I always say that I think, I wake up every day obsessing about the health of the organization and the people in the organization and the strategy. So it's the health, the people, the strategy, and how all those pieces are fitting together. Culturally, are we behaving in the way that we've said our values are? Are our values reflected in the way that we behave? Do we have the right leaders in the right place? Are we delivering on our targets and deliverables? I obsess even about how people's mental state of mind, the team, the whole NLC, because everybody's so busy in their spaces doing what they need to do all the time. But somebody needs to like worry about how the whole thing is working and whether people are mentally in the right state of mind, if there's issues or disputes or things that need to be blocked up. So that's really what I kind of do on a daily basis. And in the startup phase, that involves a lot of different little things because you're kind of building in flight. But it's like really just more kind of people management, organizational strategy, and building the thing. That's what I see myself doing every day.
And you've done a great job. I mean, I'm still here, so we are happy.
No, you can't leave. That's rule number one. Nobody gets off. Nobody gets off the boat.
We're still here. We're still here.
Yeah. That's rule number one.
People don't know how big this thing has been, and we don't get many opportunities to tell the story of the organization. There's things that we see on social media across different, geographies. Maybe, share with Mzansi what's the structure, kind of in 3 minutes, how big and how far do these tentacles reach? And when you talk about running an organization, share just the
scale.
the magnitude of this thing, because it is actually quite a thing.
No, it's absolutely massive. Certainly the biggest thing I've ever dared to do in my life. Just as you say, just the sheer scale of the structure, the people, etc. So, I mean, just to give context, when we first started, and when I say first started, I'm saying like kind of beginning of this year, January, even before our launch, we were 12 people around a table that were kind of doing this and committed to doing this every day. In a space of, what is it? Where are we now? October? The entire machinery of RISE, I don't even think we have a clear number on it yet, but I think it is in excess of about 2,000 to 3,000 people who like wake up and do RISE every day.
Yeah.
So that just gives you a sense also just of the how quickly we've had to scale up. I mean, to go from 12 to just under 3,000 people nationwide is just massive. So, and those are just the people that I would say are waking up and doing RISE every day. Yeah. That's not the reach broadly. So, one of the first things we set out to do was obviously to have presence in all 9 provinces, which involved us identifying organizers, community leaders, and such people with whom we could entrust with kind of getting RISE going in the different provinces, hosting events, and reaching out to important stakeholders and such in the province. So that work has been ongoing since April. And, again, every time we host an event and we fill a room with like 200 to 300 people, like half of that room comes with us. And so we are just absorbing people at the most massive scale. And we have set ourselves a target between now and elections to have, circa 5,000, full-time kind of people on staff. And that's the size of ShopRite, So we are building ShopRite in a 12-month period. And it's just massive. And what that means is, one, having systems in place to do that. You've got to have, computer systems, tech platforms, data security. You've got to obviously have all these people somehow getting remunerated, and so you've got to raise the money for that. You've got to, amidst all of that, actually run an election campaign. So think around, because all I'm talking about is the internal. I mean, then there's the external. So actually getting out there, having the billboards, which is your area, TM, and actually just amplifying the message. And I think what a lot of people don't see, because people will often say, "Hey, you guys, no, highly visible, we don't see you," da, da, da. And I'm like, wait, it's the
Mm.
iceberg. It's the iceberg effect. We have been slowly, and not even slowly, I'd say very rapidly, but we have been carefully kind of building the the underbelly of this organization, such that, when we are ready to kind of go big, which we already have started, um, it doesn't fall over. And I think
Mm.
that's that's actually my biggest stress. A lot of people ask me about 2024. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm still not even at 20. I'm not even at 2024 anymore. I'm already in 2026. Like,
Mm.
I'm already at, once we get our targets, once we meet our election targets in 2024, which we will, uh, then the next problem arises. What do you do with all of this, all these people, all these seats, all this stuff? So we have to be preparing ourselves for like rapid scale and
Mm.
building. We're writing policies like every day as issues arise, because we haven't had an opportunity to sit down and like write policies and think through things. But it is what it is. And I mean, fortunately, I've had time, I've had enough, I've started enough businesses, and, kind of sat in enough different types of organizations to understand at least the basics of how these things should work, and that experience is at least very helpful in all of this. But the scale is just unprecedented. I don't think any
Mm.
of us can relate to, to this type of scale.
So much for startup.
It's mad.
um, 9 provinces, National Leadership Collective, represented in a national leader and national chair, deputy chair,
Yeah.
chief organizer, national spokesperson, and
Yeah. So
many.
I mean, just to give you a sense, I mean, just in terms of our like kind of organogram, and I report to the national leader, who is essentially responsible for the whole organization, right? But
Mm.
just to give, I mean, my call it direct reports is about 24 people, which is
Mm.
a lot. Like, it's a lot of different
4 months.
conversations
In
to
four
be
months.
managing, is a lot of different things to be dealing with. And we're building the provinces at the same time. So each province has to have its own team, leadership team, and, it's inductions and getting them up and running. It's managing um, those dynamics, because, well, my husband always likes to say, the toughest thing about managing people is people. Like, people are the problem. The more people you have, the more problems you have. This is the fact.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so definitely that's probably the most complex part of this. And of course, I mean, not forgetting the actual industry we're in, which is politics, which
Hmm.
itself comes with a whole range of complexities.
Amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, to those who are joining us, my name is Tebogo, the RISE Mzansi national spokesperson. I am having the Fireside Chats with Vuyiswa Ramokgopa. She is our national chairperson, the de facto political CEO of the organization. She basically looks after the entire thing and makes sure everything works and delivers on the outcomes and the outputs of 2024, 26, 29, and beyond. Vision statement: a safe, prosperous, equal, and united South Africa
Yeah,
in one generation. Tell us about that. What does that mean to you? And how does it find expression in the work that you're doing?
yeah. I think those four words are single-handedly the most powerful, prophetic, catalytic words that we have ever kind of put together and agreed upon.
Mm.
And you'll know, TM, how we labored over those words. Like, guys, Schoa was spoken in coming to these conclusions, because words have power.
Yeah.
What you say with your mouth, what you speak into existence, has power to create that which is not there. So we were so intentional about these words, and safety for me is it's just it's so paramount
Mm.
to how we how one experiences South Africa. And I spoke earlier about Johannesburg, in particular, Johannesburg in particular. When you enter Johannesburg, and I experience this often, coming from even Cape Town, but often more so you feel it when you come from overseas, and you just land at ORT, and you just feel like tense immediately. You have to walk differently. You have to like be more conscious of everything. Your whole experience of a city starts like from the moment you step off the plane, and you feel like you have to start by protecting yourself. And
Mm.
if there's one thing that we do in this generation, is we must commit ourselves to undoing that and to changing that, and to completely, you know, we have to make that decision that safety will be top priority for us. And in particular, I mean, I say this more so as a woman, as a woman in South Africa, the feeling of safety is just it's or the lack of safety is that much more pervasive for us. And I'm not trying to pit anybody's experience against anybody else's, but I'm just saying that safety unfortunately doesn't start outside your house. Even, so many women are unsafe even in their own homes, even
Mm.
in their own bedrooms. And so we have to do something about that, and it has to be our most urgent priority. But the safety element, we recognize, and it must be recognized that it doesn't come out of nowhere. We have a
Mm.
painful, violent past. We have a society that is broken, that is fractured, where the majority of young men grow up fatherless, without
Yeah.
proper role models, without proper experience of what a loving family and relationship looks like. That breeds a certain type of individual, and it breeds a certain character in society. And so, in saying that we have to eradicate sort of crime and safety, and bring about safety, we need to say that with a recognition of where that comes from. And so a big part of that is how we deal with economic justice, how we deal with the painful rampant inequality and the living circumstances that people come out of in this country, and the socioeconomic inequality. So that word equal is also very
Mm.
important, and it's linked. And it's not equal in the sense that everyone must have a blue four-room house and must be the same, but it's about
Mm.
an equal opportunity. It's about everybody having a stake in this society. Because currently there are people who just exist in jail but don't feel like they have a stake. So we need to give it a stake to everybody in this society, to be able
Mm.
to generate the safety that we want, and to generate the unity. So the united part is critical. It's critical. We've said this many times, but South Africa is a country. It's not a nation.
Mm.
We are not yet a nation. When even the US, for all its issues and the race relations and all of that, one thing Americans are is American.
Mm.
Like, when you encounter an American person, you are going to get a very similar product of
Mm.
character, of like values, of whatever. Um, and I definitely want to use America as a benchmark, but I'm just using it as an example to say that a sense of nationhood is important. And America has done a really good job of like exporting their culture to the world and defining who they are, defining the American dream. What is that? How do we, who are we? What do we stand for? What are we about? And I think we have to do that work, and that requires a level of unity. So being united, in my opinion, is an integral part of how we redefine our country, but also how we build. our country. And then, of course, the outcome of all of this should be prosperity. So, one of the biggest hindrances actually to our development as a country right now is the fact that globally we are just perceived as a crime-ridden, unsafe country. So even those who want to potentially visit, tourism revenue is severely hampered by the fact that people are scared of coming here.
Yeah.
In the way that I'm scared of many countries I've never been to, but you used to grow up hearing that, hey, but guy, people get kidnapped. And so I'm not trying to go to those places. And so we have to deal with those issues because they're all interlinked. Prosperity, there's no prosperity in a state of permanent inequality. We've got to deal with those things. And there's no equality without unity, and so on and so forth. So I think those four, being able to distill our theory of change into those 4 words is critical. It's not a slogan, it's a declaration. And like Michael Shackleton is saying there, in one generation.
One.
So we cannot afford to be having the same discussions 30 years later. And I mean, of course, since now when we go into government in 24, 30 years later, we can't be saying, the other guys did this or the other guys made us do that. We have to declare upfront what we want to do, and we need to be held accountable to that. And the beauty of it is that we will all still be here in one generation. And so you will be able, people must be able to hold us who are living accountable to the things we said we would do.
I always enjoy the different interpretations of how people think about that vision statement, because like you say, we went through a very arduous and intense process. Even the ordering of the words, everything is intentional. And I think that's one thing that I've learned about RISE. It's intention and intentionality. We are entering into an interesting phase in our politics. We have been going through a listening process. We've gone through the People's Manifesto process. We've been through all 9 provinces, major towns, cities, metros, rural areas, townships, roundtable discussions with intellectuals, business, and the like. And we are now converging towards this moment called the People's Convention. What's that about? What is this People's Convention, and why should people care?
So the People's Convention is, in my view, and I think this is how we understand it, is that it's an opportunity for South Africans to recontract and to collectively get into a state of visioneering for the kind of country that we believe we deserve and that we should have. And this is important because, there's always talk about, the social compact. And I often say to myself, where is this thing? Who's the custodian of the social compact that exists somewhere that politicians talk about? And there's other forums where perhaps segments of society talk to each other. I think the NEDLACs, and there are forums, yes, but those forums are never forums where you and I get to have voice and give expression to our aspirations. And what you've then seen, what has happened as a result, is that most people, most South Africans, are very disconnected from the politics and from the decisions, and don't actually feel represented by a lot of the views that come across out of these forums. So for me, the People's Convention is more than just a RISE policy conference. It's actually not just a RISE policy conference at all. It is the culmination of one of the most inclusive processes of listening and gathering insights from many South Africans. And again, bringing even more people now into one room, to now thrash it out, make their voices heard, contribute, and talk about the things that are most important to them. And that's really important because, as we always say, politics is personal and it must be
Mm,
personal. And for as long as it isn't, people don't connect with it.
mm,
So I see it as, I think it's a historic moment. I think it's for me, it's like a freedom charter moment. The declaration that emerges on the last day of our conference needs to be a document that defines our generational mission and the type of South Africa that we want to see. And when somebody says, "Where's the social compact or
mm,
social contract?" we should be able to hold it up and say, "Here it is. This is
mm,
what South Africans have voiced as their aspiration for the country that they want."
mm,
And so we've engaged, and because of that understanding, I think it's informed even the way that we have gone about arriving at this moment. The level of
mm,
detail, the level of deliberation, even thinking around who needs to be in the room. We can't obviously have the whole country in the room on the 6th of October, but we can have, a broad enough, diverse representation, as well as obviously having documented the many other conversations we've had. So I think it's a pivotal moment. It's a turning point. It's a moment for South Africans to finally declare what they want to see. And
mm,
I look forward to what will come out of the 3 days of deliberations.
mm. Yeah, Ahmed, great program. So, for those who don't know, 6th to 8th of October, we will be hosting the People's Convention at Constitution Hill, a monumental space and a monumental moment where RISE Mzansi essentially are going to be converging, and bringing together the thoughts that have been happening over the last 4 months worth of work. Like I said earlier, we've been to all 9 provinces, we've been to major cities, metros, we've spoken to organized business, informal business, entrepreneurs, everybody that we felt, needs to have a voice. We've tried to make sure they have a platform to talk. And over that 3 days, so it starts on the Friday, and obviously we've got our plenary, but we've got amazing breakaway sessions, and they're broken up into 6 themes. The themes are family, which really speaks about the family and the individual and how you make sure that the family life is protected and flourishes. We've got community. An important part of the South African experience is based on where you live and who you live amongst, not even geographically, but also digitally and other ways. We are made up of so many communities. We've got governance, which speaks to how RISE Mzansi would want to govern. It's about structural reform, political reform, judicial reform, reforming the economy. Vuyiswa talked about economic justice being an anchor of how we want to readjust and think about the world that we want to live in. The economy in its own is its own theme and thematic area. We've got climate change, and the last one is nationhood and the South African identity. So those are the 6 themes, which will be part of the breakaways. And what we are encouraging is people to rotate around the different experiences and spaces to make a contribution across the board. Because what we don't realize is that climate change is not about the difference between going coal or going renewable. For many people in KZN, in the Eastern Cape, in Cape Town, right now, they're experiencing climate change at the most granular level. And it's therefore about how does climate change affect South Africans at that level.
Yeah.
So, yeah, those are going to be some of the breakaways. And then, like Vuyiswa spoke about, the declaration, the social contract, the social compact, which will then unravel into the People's Manifesto, our political project and political mission, and then the People's Plan for Change, which then comes out in 2024. So very exciting, but also in parallel to that, we're also going to be doing organizing around joy and creativity. So whilst people are having the plenary and the breakaways, we're going to be having what Vuyiswa has always been passionate about, the creative industry, the creative space, people are going to be contributing to shaping their country in other ways other than writing documents and talking about policy. So, and that's going to be open to the public. People can come through. It's going to be open to children, families, something that you've never seen South Africa do before, which is how do families and people huddle around building a future that they deserve. So very excited, 6th to 8th of October, Constitution Hill. Sis Vuyiswa, we're probably going to wrap about 19:30. So we're gonna get down into the heart of things now.
Evan, we're not in the heart yet.
No.
Jesus.
We're gonna go off script. We're gonna go off script.
Oh, scary.
People want to know who is Vuyiswa and how does she? What are her politics? What are your politics? What are your politics? I mean, you're a black professional woman living in South Africa, a mother, a wife, a spiritual being. People want to know what are your politics. People follow people. And so when they go to the People's Convention, they're going to see documents and words put together, but those are part and parcel of the people that are actually organized to create and be part of RISE Mzansi. What are your politics?
So let me maybe answer that by sharing a bit about my parents and how I have come to hold the ideas that I hold. So my father, as I said, he is an actor. In fact, before even being an actor, he was a ballerina. He was a dancer and a ballet dancer in the 80s.
Wow.
An African man, half Xhosa, half Venda, and a dancer who wore tights. And has always been a very open-minded liberal man. In fact, I now say that I think he's the first feminist I ever met. Because my father practiced equality and gender equality in a way that I have not seen actually even much of till this day. It was very much, and it is very much a part of who he is. Growing up, I never felt like there was a boy that needed to do things. If whatever he wanted to do with his child, he would do with me. And whether that's kicking the ball around or going to play pool, he taught me how to play pool. And any ambitions he had for any child, he had for me. And so that has always it's given me a sense of my own capabilities. But I'm sharing this because I'm saying my feminism was actually taught to me by my father.
Wow.
And it's essentially a deep sense of equality and seeing what that can do actually in a home, in a household, etc. My father was not, although he earned, but because he was in the performing arts, his income wasn't guaranteed. He would go long periods without earning, and so my mom, being the salaried one for many years, would be the one who was actually paying the bills. And so to see that dynamic of a couple that was truly kind of practicing equality before it was fashionable to do so was quite formative, was important for how I came to understand the world and thus my politics. So that's the one side. The other side is informed by my mother's story. So my mom, my grandmother actually owned property in Sophia Town. And my mom often used to recount the story of the forced removals, that first wave in the late 50s, and how she would tell the story first person of literally the day the army guys came and they were like taking stuff out of people's houses and putting them on the back of a truck. And she was 6 years old at the time. And she says, for them, they were just children. So they were just excited to be on the back of a truck driving somewhere. And that's her memory, like being on the back of a truck with their entire life on the back of a truck, leaving their home in Sophia Town and being literally dropped and dumped in Meadowlands in Soweto. Meadowlands, I mean, the irony of that name. where they had just erected, the forum, but there was nothing else. No schools, no electricity, no nothing, no anything. So they still had to travel back to school like 45 minutes away because they hadn't done anything other than erect houses. And those old houses with the asbestos roofs and all of that. So my mom often recounts that story. And again, I think that very much informed my sense of justice and just like an injustice rather to the fact that a whole generation was forced to go back to the start line, like in Monopoly, where you could be like right by the end, or like snakes and ladders, you go,
Let us.
and then
Hey, yoga is in yoga.
yeah, and then suddenly a whole generation's wealth and upward mobility and access to education and everything is just ripped out from under them because some government has made a law. And so that has always been something quite enduring for me that has stuck with me and informed my sense of justice and my sense of right and wrong, I think. And then lastly, and I think this is probably the most defining part of me, is my, call it Africanism. I'm in love with this continent, and I love African culture, and I love everything that is African, and I always have. And that also stems, I think, probably from my mom. She was, from the Black consciousness era, and she always used to tell me her stories about how revolutionary even that moment was in history for them. Talking about being young, gifted, and black, and the whole black and proud thing. The pictures of them with their afros and just looking so swaggy. So I think that defined, just for me also, it's a big defining factor for me. My axe that I'm grinding every single day is, I'm not willing to let the naysayers, the oppressors, the racists, the bigots, I'm not willing to let them be right. So we have to, as a continent, we have to get it right, because we have been made to believe or led to believe that Africans can't govern. Africans can't look after themselves. Look now, you see, we told you, if you give them a country, they'll destroy it. They can't look after themselves. And I'm like, yes, we can, and we will. And we're going to show up excellent and capable and ethical with integrity. And I'm not doing it kind of as an anti thing, but rather as a self-affirming thing, because I do believe that this is the most incredible continent. We have talent that is powering the rest of the world. If you look at the statistics of the graduations from Ivy League schools right now in the US, the majority of graduates from Ivy League schools are from the African continent and from India and China. That's the power coming out of, and I'm not saying anybody's better than anyone. I'm just saying, that all that human capital could be here and could be powering this continent if we could just get the governance issues right. And so that's my axe that I'm grinding. I love this continent. As I said, I had the experience in my formative years of living in West Africa. My child has a Swahili name. I speak French because I want to be able to speak to as many people as I can and connect with as many people as I can on the continent. And I love my country. I love South Africa, but I want us to get this right. Like South Africa has to get it right. And so it's a big part, and by the way, this is not just me saying this. I've heard this also from so many of our counterparts on the continent who said, like, South Africa has to get it right. Because if South Africa fails, like, it's just, we all fail, quite frankly. So I'm a Pan-Africanist. I'm into the writings of the late great Steve Biko. I love Robert Sobukwe. I love I love Thomas Sankara. I think I'm also not very dogmatic. If I'm honest, I think that ideology is important, but also it can also mask nonsense, if I
Mm,
lack of a better word.
mm, mm,
So
mm,
I think that we need to just be in a state right now. What informs my politics is like, what are the particular problems we have in front of us, and what is the
mm,
shortest route to solving them? Like that's where
mm,
I am
mm,
now. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell. I want my children to grow up knowing who they are and having a sense of pride about who they are. Um,
mm.
and the choices that I make every day are about reaffirming that for them. I want them to look at me and say, hey, my mom can do it in her African print dress. You don't have to change who you are to navigate this world or to be on stages. Yeah, so that's my politics, I think, in a nutshell.
Nice. I like your politics. I think we can work together.
Oh,
What
and
are your
I forgot to say very importantly,
mm,
I'm a Democrat. I believe in democracy.
mm,
Sincerely believe in democracy. Because I believe that people actually do know. I believe people know best. I really do. And I think that it's the role of leaders to bring out that best in people.
mm,
So,
mm?
yeah.
Two non-negotiables. What's offline? It's not even discussed. It's not available. What are Vuyiswa's non-negotiables
In what forum? In
in
general.
your world as a human being? What is it that is non-negotiable that you will not accept and sits outside of what is in the realm of what we can discuss and navigate through?
Yeah, so again, it's a broad question, Sal. I mean, there could be more specific non-negotiables, but I'll say in general, uh, lies or liars or people who don't present themselves honestly and authentically,
Mm,
that's a non-starter for me. Um, I often say, even to my husband, that a flawed person I can deal with. Flaws I can deal with. Lies I cannot deal with.
mm,
Like, um, and yeah, that's just the one thing as a non-negotiable for me is lies, and being made a fool of. And then probably just in terms of so I said a flawed person, but it's not all flaws. I think my other non-negotiable in terms of flaws is people who are sexual predators, particularly as it pertains to children. So I mean, well, just any harm to children, in my opinion, is like the highest offense.
mm,
Even if I was a lawmaker and I had a spectrum of crimes, for me, any crimes against children in particular are the worst of the worst of the worst,
yeah,
are non-negotiable for me. So yeah.
sure. I asked that question not knowing what the answer was, and as you speak, I'm connected to your answers in such a deep way, and partly because we are both young parents. We're parents to girl children and boy children, but girl children has a certain level of amplification, knowing in the country that we live in. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and you know what? The part that actually kills me so much when I read stories in the newspapers or whatever, like we live in a violent society, so we're going to read about violence every day. But violence towards children or crimes against children are so much worse because they are the impact and the effects is multi-generational.
mm,
Literally ruined it for this person for the rest of their life. They're going to spend the rest of their life picking up the pieces of the fact that you couldn't keep your hands off them when they were 6 years old. And we now as a society have to deal with a damaged person for the next 60, 70 years because of something that did. And I think it's just particularly heinous to commit crimes against children, and also because they're just so innocent. Like, they don't deserve any of this at all. Not that anybody does, but yeah. So I mean, the other day I was reading a terrible story, and I won't relay it here, but it was a story about a terrible crime that had been committed, where it was a domestic violence case, actually, where the child was a victim of the violence that was being inflicted against their mother. And I was listening to the story on the radio, and it's just like on the midday news, and it's like the most horrendous story. And this child had suffered burn wounds, and it was terrible. And I just parked my car, and I sat in my car crying, unable to just fathom how do you move forward after such a thing happens to your child, or to a child that you know, or to the child themselves. Like, how do you, anyway? I don't want to go back there, but that for me is like, I would reopen. Anyway, let me not go there, because
now you're changing policy.
Let me not go there. Hey, I don't quote her. I don't want to be quoted.
But when we talk about family and we talk about community, the zero tolerance on violence against women, children, people with disabilities is definitely high up on the agenda. And it's something that we must never accept. It's fundamentally, we must never be okay with that. And I think we've become okay with many things that are broken. So we've got about 7 minutes to go, and this has been amazing. I mean, I know you, V. I know you. I can even say V.
Yes, you can. I was actually about to say, I was going to offline you after this and say, don't call me Sis V ever again. Like, you of all people are not allowed.
I'm using all the terms of endearment that people have come to know you as, and actually that's one that's come out as we've been touring and going to different places, and such an interesting journey. But I think the point was, I'm so grateful to have had this conversation with you, because I know you, but I haven't had this conversation with you.
Yeah, so true.
RISE Mzansi is giving us so many opportunities to be human again with people that we've been very transactional with before. All of a sudden it's like, we're changing the world, so I gotta know you a little bit. Where do I take you now? Tell me a bit about the future. You are a visionary, a strategist, someone who dreams in color. Where are we going, and what does the future look like when we win?
Whew, huge question. But definitely a question I've thought about a lot. And, I actually want to pull this out quickly. This is a book that I'm very inspired by. Many of you would have heard about it. It's called From Third World to First. And it's written by Lee Kuan Yew, who is the architect of Singapore, that so many people love to quote, But what I love about this book is that it's a manual. It's a practical manual of like how to build a society from nothing to something in one generation. And what the building blocks of that look like. So I think the most important thing we need to do is stay focused on that outcome. And I believe that a generation from now, or a generation from the moment RISE Mzansi comes into government, would be fundamentally transformative. And it would start with, returning a culture of excellence back to this country. And you've got a nice way of phrasing it. I can't remember your specific terminology, but it's about returning that aspect, like the belief that we can, is actually where it starts. The belief that we can, the belief that we're worthy, that we're capable. And then from that, you can actually do anything. We have so much human capital in the volume of young people, for example, that we have in this country. So rapidly kind of reskilling, upskilling, and appropriately skilling young people would immediately yield a dividend that would see this country just fundamentally shift in far less than a generation, by the way. I think if you're quite concerted about that, you can see an immediate shift in like a 5 to 7 year period, with just aggressive reskilling and appropriate skilling. And then obviously being able to attract investment. And investment is a silly thing, because investment has favorites. Investment just wants to feel like, if I put my money there, will it maybe be safe? That's it. Will it grow? Will it be safe? And that starts with confidence. And confidence starts with saying, we have a plan. This is how we're going to put the country back together. And these are the people that we're going to put in the right place. And immediately, once that investment starts trickling in, and you've got, the right kind of projects, initiatives, and you're directing that investment appropriately, I mean, it all just becomes so real and possible. So I wouldn't be doing this, of course, if I didn't wholeheartedly believe that it's possible, and not that it's not just possible, that it will be done. And as I'm saying, I really recommend to anybody who's interested to read this book, because it is instructive. I mean, they go into even questions around nationhood and social integration that they practiced to bring people of different languages into living amongst each other, to be able to drive social cohesion. Now, these are conversations you would know, Debza, that we are catalyzing as RISE. And that we need to have if we're going to be the kind of country that we want to be. And then we need to be able to say, what is the cost of that? What are we willing to sacrifice now in the short term for this long-term thing that we want to build together? But long story short, I think South Africa has an opportunity to be the biggest economy on the African continent. I think we have the ability to actually lead like we have in the past on the African continent. I think we have the ability to also be and continue to be a very significant global player, but not just economically, but also just showing the world what is possible, and showing the world the third way, another way of being, that a country that is diverse, that comes out of a very difficult past, that was on the brink of collapse, can actually pull itself back and can be great again. Can be great. So I'm really excited by that prospect. I think we're going to rebuild this country, and I think we're going to set the world on fire. What South Africa is going to be able to achieve in a RISE government is going to show the world what is possible.
The art of the possible.
The art of the possible, exactly. And I'm really blessed to be a part of that journey.
V, last words, last thoughts. How are you feeling? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good, Tiem. I think this was a great conversation. It's an amazing platform. Thank you. I'm loving the comments as well. There's like a lot of nice comments, encouraging comments coming up on the comment thread. So really appreciate the opportunity. It actually has also been good for me to dig deep and think through some of these things. And in 2 minutes, it's going to be bedtime. So I'm literally going to hang up this call and then run to go and put my little one to bed. But yeah, that's mom life. Also, you can't sacrifice it. I think that's also what motivates us and what keeps me going. So yeah, thank you so much. I think it's been an incredible conversation.
Thank you, Vuyiswa. Ladies and gents, that brings us to the end of our evening. Trust me, we could do this for another 3 hours. because there's depth. People always argue that, the people of RISE Mzansi are new into politics. We're not new into politics. We are organizing ourselves based on a history, but also based on the agitation of this moment. When we say 2024 is our 1994, what we are saying is there's a converging moment of everybody who's been waiting for the winning moment. And RISE Mzansi wants to be that vehicle, that platform that encourages, that coordinates, that facilitates this change that we've all desired. We've seen it. We've seen it. We've had moments of brilliance where we're like, I wish I had more of that. And I think RISE Mzansi wants to create more of that. Thank you very much, Vuyiswa. I appreciate you as a human. I appreciate you as my leader. I look up to you. You are an incredible woman, an incredible human, an incredible professional. And I can't wait until the rest of South Africa gets to benefit from all that you are, you know. I hope we can, in the same way as your kids have given you the Mom of the Year, Mom of the Decade award. I hope that the country can benefit from some of that which you've been able to give your family, because I definitely think there's more to go around. To everybody who's been on the platform, thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to get into your homes, into your private spaces. We really, really would love that you come with us on this journey. It will never happen on our own. We need more hands, and we need them quick. So please go on to www.risemzansi.org and join the organization, become a volunteer. We don't have members, we don't have chapters, we don't have leagues. We just have people who are committed to wanting to be part of the change. So please step into the arena so that we can realize the South Africa that we deserve. Vuyiswa, I'll see you tomorrow at the office. Thank you so much, and have a good evening, sister.
And thank you for your kind words. You like got a young thug crying there, guy. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Regards to the family. Cool. Bye.